with what they do in the in-store experience. And I think that this is an exceptional example of their fearlessness and what they've been prepared to do to make sure that that happens. Certainly all around you, but the Surface is a prime example. So, do you guys all have experience with Surface? Do you know what Surface is? Okay, so Surface is a multi-touch computing environment that allows us to do a number of things, not unlike an iPhone or a number of the other multi-touch applicable technologies that are out there, but on a much larger scale. And the brief was simple. I mean, it was about mediating conversations, generating conversion of customers into, or people into paying customers, but also using it as a way to teach and for people to learn. So the primary goal initially was to ensure that Surface didn't become technology for technology's sake. That's a critical part of the brief. We didn't want it to be a toy that people just came in and played with because it was here. We wanted it to actually be the center of a meaningful conversation between potential customer and the customer service representative. So we have a couple of states on the Surface that are probably worth talking about. This is referred to as the attract state. So what it does is obviously, like a screensaver on a computer, to a certain extent, it's attracting you to want to engage with it, or at least have a conversation about how you engage with it. We were fortunate in the design of the store in that we didn't actually have to worry about interactivity on either of the short ends, but what we had to think about was how interactivity could occur. Multiple customer service representatives on either side of the table interacting at the same time. So that was one thing. So what we have is we have a sort of an invisible 50-50 line here, and you'll see that these keep changing colors. It's very consistent with the brand. We have calls to action changing on I think it's about 2 minutes or a little less. And we have, brand elements in here which are, the thought bubbles or speech bubbles that represent conversations between people in the Win Mobile environment or universe. So what we do first in the attract mode is just a real simple piece of interactivity, which is the idea that you can activate these ideas, which is what this obviously ultimately represents, and you can get like a kind of a cute little response if you throw them into the walls together so that when conversations occur and ideas collide, interesting things happen. Happy little things, happy accidents, happy great things happen. So that's part of the attract mode. The other thing that a customer could do without the help of a CSR is they can obviously take a look at plans. So we have a plans tab here that gives us a sense, sort of a thumbnail sketch of what the plans are for Win Mobile, both data and voice. And so that you can sort of take a look at these. You can obviously, it starts off that way, but you can take a look at the voice plans in not great detail, but enough that you could enter into a conversation with somebody, and the same with the data. Where the real fun starts is each of the phones has what's referred to as a byte tag. A byte tag is not so dissimilar from a QSR tag or a QR code. So what you do is, if you're interested in sort of looking at a phone, you would obviously enter into a conversation with the CSR, and that CSR would then place the phone down on the table and be able to talk you through certain elements of the phone. And we've sort of divided up into key features and price that you can move through this way. Then you can sort of arrow through to specifications for that phone. If you choose not to arrow, you can flip like typical multi-touch applications allow you to do. And it takes you all the way through right down to the plan level. At the plan level, obviously, if you're interested in this particular phone, there are a number of different plans that you can engage in. But in this particular instance, let's look at the Social BlackBerry plan. What we do is we have orientation so that the plan pops up to the plan tab, and so that you can take a look at the plans that are specific color-coded to this particular phone. But now, one of the interesting things about Win is that you purchase your handset up front, which is it's a great cost saver. But let's say you're not really sure whether you're interested in buying a BlackBerry Bold or another equally great phone, which is the HTC Maple, excuse me. So, and you want to compare the two phones. You're not really sure what the differences are specifically between those phones. So we have this opportunity here to put two phones down at the table at any given moment. So a CSR can walk you through each of the phones exactly that way. But we thought that was a little cumbersome. So what we did was we created a bit of an attract mode. So if you move these two phones together, like that. What it does is it locks them together, and what you're doing is you're comparing features and services note for note, so that everything is lined up so that you have a real sense in a true compare way of what the differences are between these two phones. You can obviously move through that. You can only do 2 at a time, but 2 at a time on either side, so that you can pull them apart, you can bring another phone in and do the same thing, and you can remove the phones and start all over again if you want. It's really kind of, for current state, that's what we wanted to do, because we thought it was an interesting way of integrating the Surface into the stores, not making it technology for technology's sake, and providing a really interesting way to generate a conversion funnel through conversation. You know, future state for Surface, and certainly some of the things that we have notionally been discussing, is, I mean, it's the fascinating thing about the bike tag piece is that Microsoft, about 8 months ago, introduced these new tags, which are 128-bit encrypted tags, which means that you can tag every single thing on the planet and generate data that is related to that tag. So you can imagine in a future state, you're not tagged. Nice try. That was good. I'll give you a tag later. But in a future state, you can imagine what that means from a personalization perspective, from a customer perspective. The fact that every customer might eventually have their own tag, or a tag that represents their account. So personalization and pieces that they can do and engage in the store is almost limitless. And that's part of the promise of these sorts of devices. So that's kind of Surface. I mean, I welcome you to play with it. I mean, this couldn't have been done without sort of really close collaboration with the folks at the Surface team in Redmond. They've been amazing in Washington. And they're helping us sort of identify longer-term art of the possible with Surface. But I mean, I would say, having watched CSRs in stores over Christmas and since, it's been a real interesting experience to watch them engaging with customers around this. Obviously, customers are very interested in knowing what this is about, but ultimately, because of the simplicity of the application, where there's not tons of stuff flying at you in any given moment, it seems that the ability to settle into a conversation about what Win Mobile means and how you can engage with Win Mobile as a customer, it happens really quickly, and it seems to happen in a profound way. And this tool has helped us do that. And I don't think that there's any application on Surface right now that does that in such a meaningful and profound way. And again, it speaks to the overall brand that Win represents. So
we've got 22 of these units, I think it is, across Canada, which makes us the largest deployment of Surface in Canada. They said not in North America. I don't know who's got more in the US, but
yeah, we're getting really close. Yeah, they won't release the numbers, obviously, but we're getting really close to being up, certainly in the top 5 in North America.
And then using it, to your point, using it as a sales tool. So it is actually a sales tool in the stores, which in most places it's more for fun and display. So we're pretty impressed with what we've done so far.
Yeah. That's good. Any questions?
Cool. How is the information updated there? Is it through head office, or do you do like if a price changes for a phone?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. So everybody at the Win store, every manager, excuse me, has something called an FF tag. An FF tag is, the only reason we call it FF tag is because that's the tag we programmed to be this. But the FF tag is basically the admin tag. So if there's a content update, we don't actually have it working through a very specific CMS. What we do is we update XML files, but if there is an update that needs to be run, there's a couple of things that this thing does. This is basically the admin console. So if I was to put this down, what that does is now give me my volume control, my idle and mute, and then I can refresh content from the web, or I can refresh content locally. If it's local, I use a USB stick that just basically plugs in down here, and you can update that way. If I'm to refresh content from the web, all I do is press the Update Content Now button. It runs through a, I hope I don't kill it. It runs through a sort of a checksum process, and then updates the content based on what needs to be done. So for price changes, if there's a new phone, if features and specifications change, that's the way that we do that. When we get into version next, and we start to bring in new kinds of elements to the application, more than likely it'll be either rolled out by us remotely, because we can remote into every single one of these surfaces, or we will be sending out keys and allowing them to update from a local USB key.
The roadmap that we've talked about is for this to be much more integrated into our back-end systems. So for example, as you were saying, you can put, as Michael was saying, you can put your phone down, you notice it's your phone, you want to add content, rather than download it, doing the SMS or PMSS, you can actually walk into a store and download content directly onto your phone and pay for it. We'd actually have this connected also to our point of sale system and our billing system, so if you wanted to, like I said, add content, if you wanted to add a plan, you wanted to add roaming, whatever, you could do that automatically through the service. So the whole idea is to have this fully integrated and intuitive. So lots of technology in the background, but just keep it simple for customers.
Yeah.